after all those decades and centuries, always in full respect for democracy and the rule of law, that we want to have and enjoy our own country.
There's the new leader of the Parti Québécois, Pierre Karl Péladeau. As expected, he won the leadership of the PQ this week, and as you heard, he has lost no time in declaring again his intention for an independent Quebec. But is that a realistic goal? And can such a divisive figure find a way to unite a divided PQ? To talk about this and much more, we've convened the Sunday Scrum. The Globe and Mail's John Ibbitson and the CBC's Rosemary Barton are standing by in Ottawa, and Maclean's Magazine, Martin Patrickin, joins us from Montreal. So, Marty, let's start with you. What do you think his leadership means for the sovereignty movement?
For sovereignty itself, I don't think it means a whole lot right now, unless you're in sort of the echo chamber of the PQ. He's spent the last several months sort of talking to the PQ with little else, and frankly, we are 1 year into a brand new mandate for Philippe Couillard. So along those lines, it doesn't mean much, but you sort of hit on it a little bit there. His job right now within the movement itself is going to be to unite those disparate issues, disparate parts of the sovereignty movement. You have the PQ, which is obviously, the big gun in the room. But you have also Option Nationale, you have Québec Solidaire, and everybody sort of differs on how you should approach sovereignty. Should we do it within the next mandate? Should we talk about it like crazy? Should we sort of put it off, et cetera? So I mean, it's the classic PQ thing that happens to every single new leader. Right now, what we've seen a little bit of is him actually talking a lot more about sovereignty than, say, Pauline Marois would have back in the day. You're sort of in the mold a little bit more of Jacques Parizeau.
What do you think, John? Do you feel like you're in a time warp? Oh my gosh, here we go again.
Well, no, actually, I feel for once and for all, we're outside the time warp. I mean, Mr. Péladeau talks about a country. He doesn't talk about sovereignty association. He doesn't talk about a new relationship with Canada. He doesn't talk about being masters in our own house. He wants a country. And that presumes a clear referendum on are we in or are we out after if he wins. Which I devoutly hope he won't. At a time when the sovereignty is at its lowest ebb in Quebec, it is refreshing to have a leader who is prepared to go over the cliff if he has to in order to put the question right before the Quebec people. I think the more interesting question then becomes who is going to be the real opposition to the Couillard government, because in all of this ranting about whether we'll have a referendum and how and what, the fact remains that the Liberals need an effective opposition party of one kind or another, and I'm not entirely sure that the PQ can even present itself as one.
Rosie, the federal parties are not exactly shaking in their boots over this one just yet, right?
No, because, while I agree, perhaps Mr. Péladeau is being clearer than some of his predecessors have been, certainly clearer than Pauline Marois. We've seen this movie before. I worked in Quebec City all the way back in 2001, 2003. I've seen many leaders come and go. All of them were declared the saviors of the Parti Québécois. All of them are gone, and none of them accomplished what the PQ's first rule was, which is first, mandate or raison d'être was, which was to create an independent Quebec. They have a much larger problem than a leader, and it's something that the Parti Québécois fails to address time and again, and that is that they need Quebecers to buy in. And they've tried all different kinds of ways, economic ways, most recently trying to build around their identity, and it does not work. So, what does he have to present to Quebecers that would make them engage with this dream? I'm not sure that he has anything new.
And that's exactly sort of what I was saying before. Like the fact is he is only talking to the PQ right now. He has endeared himself to the PQ somehow. This right of center union busting leader has endeared himself to left leaning people within the PQ. He's done that, and that's the noise that you're hearing now. It's going to be a very cold shower once you sort of have to start speaking to the rest of the population.
Well, speaking of a cold shower, people who have experienced his temper, and you've written about this, Marty, may want to have to take a cold shower afterwards. We're going to quote a couple of things, and Marty will get you to react. So there was one situation when a former PQ candidate, Pierre Karl, claims Péladeau said this to him: "You, mon tabarnak, I'm going to buy you." how much do you cost? I apologize for swearing.
Yeah, you
and
just
another,
swore.
I just swore. But, you know, I think
it's in English, so you basically mentioned the church.
There
so
we
it's
go.
no big deal.
Yeah, that was, we did have a discussion about whether I should say that. But it does, we are talking about the leader of a major political party, so it feels like fair to do that. Another situation involving Pierre Karl, an Astral media exec who came to greet Péladeau at an event, and Péladeau reportedly said this, quote, "You've got a lot of balls coming over here to see me. I don't want anyone from Bell or Astral coming over here to say hello." When asked about it, Péladeau called you, Marty, a pamphleteer. Wow.
Didn't deny it, though.
What's that? You don't deny it? All right.
He didn't deny it.
Oh,
He
you
didn't
didn't
deny
deny it. Okay, so Mr. Pamphleteer,
Yes.
tell us about this, because that's some pretty salty language coming from the leader of a party that would like to form its own country.
Yeah, and then just let me say first, to have the owner of the Journal de Montréal call me a pamphleteer, I nearly passed out from the irony. But images can be massaged. Character traits can be fixed. Look what the great job the NDP has done with Tom Mulcair. Tom Mulcair came into this, and the big talking point when Mulcair came, can we control his temper? Blah blah blah. We don't see that anymore. Tom's put a lot of effort into it. His team's put a lot of effort into to change perceptions, and that can be done. I think you could arguably do the same thing with Pierre Karl Péladeau.
He's not very charismatic, though. I mean, you know him better than I do, Marty. I don't find him to be very charismatic.
I saw him for that piece that I wrote. I saw him work a room, and he went into rooms without notes, and he starts off very, very nervous. He comes out and he laughs at his own jokes a little bit too much. But when he starts get going, he's actually quite good. It's almost like watching a guy in embryo. But I think the bigger issue for him, though, isn't going to be his image and the explosion. It's going to be even bigger than that. It's the fact that he's the majority shareholder of Quebecor. That remains the issue. That's his Achilles heel, and that's going to hurt him very much politically. I'm even willing to say, I would venture to say that I think he might even be willing to further divest himself of those Quebecor interests should it become an issue.
John, how serious do you think that is? The fact that he owns 40% of the media in Quebec and he's the leader of the PQ.
Well, we're going to watch it very carefully, aren't we? And if there are any signs whatsoever that Quebecor-owned companies are soft pedaling during whatever crisis comes up, whatever controversy comes up, then that's going to get pointed out. The Berlusconi effect.
Who's going to point it out? Radio Canada and the La Presse, and no one else. There's no one else left.
Well, that's enough. I mean, there's that.
And the English media.
And conversely, if Journal de Montréal or somebody else produces this huge expose on Pierre Karl Péladeau, and people start getting fired as a result, we'll be watching that too. We still do have a free press in the province of Quebec and outside Quebec and the rest of Canada.
The other thing that he has, though, because of that Quebecor thing, is the name recognition. Both he and his wife, who has been the host of a variety of game shows and all those kinds of things, I mean, they are sort of Quebec royalty, and that plays pretty well in the province of Quebec, so even though, we're not sure the ideas will resonate and get traction, they are a star power couple, and that's something that will help them an awful lot.
All right.
And they're timing their marriage with all of this. So
right.
I wasn't going to get into that, but yes.
Say what you will about that.
Wow. Okay. A nice little wedding to throw it in. All right. Moving on to a different topic now. An ambitious environmental promise from the Harper government this week that it will commit to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% below 2005 levels by 2030. Also, rules to reduce methane emissions as well as emissions from the electricity sector. Will promises really come to pass? Liberals couldn't meet their targets either, so we've discussed on this show the animosity that's growing between the provinces and the feds, and that it's all about environmental targets, and we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, let's talk about these targets, Rosie. How's the government characterizing this, and what are the opposition parties saying about it?
Well, the government says that they are ambitious, which is sort of not even saying enough. They are beyond ambitious for the simple reason that we know from government documents that the government is not going to meet its 2020 targets. It's nowhere near meeting them. And unless the government puts some clear regulations around the oil sands sector, oil and gas sector, beyond methane, I'm talking about the oil sands, they are not going to come anywhere close to be able to meet these 2030 targets. The only way the opposition parties sort of agree that this might happen is if Canada is able to buy credits from other countries, which is not really the same as actively trying to control your own greenhouse gas emissions, we understand. So these are very much just numbers, and I think very much a political play to try and suggest they're doing something. No one thinks that this government has any credibility when it comes to these kinds of targets.
And John, to be fair, the Liberals didn't really have credibility either. No one seems to be. So John, what do you think about this? Is this just political talking and no one has any intention of ever meeting this and we should all just go back to sleep?
Yeah, pretty much. But you know what? I'm actually very optimistic about this. It's Canadian federalism at work. Justin Trudeau, if he becomes Prime Minister, or Thomas Mulcair, if he becomes Prime Minister, may set targets. They won't be met. And you know why they won't be met? Because it is impossible now, in light of modern political reality, for a federal government to impose on provinces standards against their will. You just don't go in and put the 13 First Ministers together in a room and said, all right, here's the new Canada Health Act, only we're calling it the new Canada Environmental Awareness Act, and we are going to impose these caps on you, and whatever it does to your economy, we don't care because we're the federal government. It just doesn't happen anymore. Ask Marty what would happen if they tried it in Quebec. Instead, you have Quebec and Ontario and British Columbia independently and working together, coming up with their own greenhouse gas emission regimes. You now have an NDP government in Alberta, so if anything can be done in Alberta without absolutely crippling and destroying the Alberta economy, it will be done under Rachel Notley, I am confident. The federal government may have some kind of coordinating and reporting role, but this is being done the way it should be done. It's being done by the provinces, among the provinces, and with Ottawa keeping its nose out.
All right.
Although I agree with the science fiction targets that they keep setting are kind of foolish.
Okay, before we continue, I'll get you, Marty, to respond to this. But since, John, you mentioned that this is federalism working well, Glenn Murray certainly had something to say about all of this. He's the Environment Minister in Ontario. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Who dumps all over you, criticizes everything you're doing, and then takes credit for the things they criticized, and then a moment before an election, all of a sudden puts their happy smiley face on. It's a little peculiar.
All right, so I don't know whether that's...
It's not peculiar at all.
What's that?
It's not peculiar at all. That's called politics, my friend. That's how it works.
What do you think, though, about Glenn Murray and, that we've heard from? I mean, we know that there's no love lost between the provincial Liberals in Ontario and the federal Tories, but there is a sense there's some cynicism out there, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like newsflash, the Conservatives are electoralist and cynical. Well, of course they are. They're the governing party, and they want to win again, and that's how they're going to win. I agree with what John said. I would go even further. I would say, this was exactly what Conservatives had planned to do. They always said that any sort of climate change initiative within Canada would be province first. They said as much in 2008 in a white paper on that. They've said that every single province can do it. What sort of tailor make it for themselves. The thing that they of course have left out was that they haven't given any extra funding to the provinces for that. But to sort of come out and say that this is a very cynical thing to do. No, actually, the Conservatives said exactly this, that they were going to let the provinces do it on their own.
At least we're not using, remember that terrible word they used to always use, aspirational targets? At least we haven't heard that word in a little while.
Sounds like a vacuum.
Yeah, it does.